Welcome to the Bernitha Rena Relates Podcast. I'm your host, Bernitha Rena. Today, I'm joined by Rosemary Lewis, also known as the Real Estate Bestie. She's a woman who's built her success without a blueprint. But she didn't just build a thriving real estate career, she built a whole community of besties, a platform rooted in education, habits, and heart. Today, Rosemary shares how faith, family, and loss shaped her success, and why God is now asking her to loosen her grip on what she's built and trust Him with the next move. I've been looking forward to this for so long, and so I just want to welcome you to the Bernitha Rena Relates Podcast.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you, but before we jump into all the fun stuff, I have got to tell you this quick story about how I came to know about you through your online presence. So many years ago, I was interested in the real estate industry. And so I started looking up all these different realtors in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I came across your profile. You were definitely an expert in the area. In the end, I decided not to move forward with the real estate venture that I was interested in initially, but I still continue to follow you online. And I really didn't, and still don't, spend a whole lot of time on social media, but there was something about your presence that was just so interesting and intriguing to me. It was so real and authentic, and you shared from just a really kind and vulnerable place. So long story short of it, even though I did not pursue any of the real estate stuff that brought me online, I still kept following you. Then when I decided years later to start this podcast, I remember thinking, oh, she's one of the first people that I'm going to reach out to. And so I remember contacting you on Facebook, and I thought, she has all these followers and she has all this content. I was shocked that you responded back to my message. Like, yeah, sure, I'll come on your podcast. Just let me know. So then I finished season 1 and I went to a church conference, and still in the back of my mind, I was like, I need to follow up with Rosemary. I went to a church conference and there you were talking on stage. I was like, wow, that's Rosemary. I thought to myself, I'll reach out to her again online. I'll just remind her that we were going to connect. After the conference, I was doing some sort of volunteering. We had to put flyers in the chairs. And as I'm on the row and I'm putting in my flyers, there you go, walking right by me. So I go up to you and I'm like, hey, Rosemary, do you remember me? And you're just so nice and so courteous. And I know you're looking at me like, I don't know who this chick is. I asked you to be on my podcast and you said yes. And we were able to make all this happen. So I tell that long-winded story because I want people to understand, like, she's a real, genuine, kind person.
Just as our business grows, I'm often talking to people and they're so surprised that I answer my phone. And so surprised that I respond. I'm like, well, I don't have a business. So I totally do that. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're a devoted wife and mom and one of DFW's most trusted real estate voices. But what was life like before you were the darling of DFW?
I was born and raised in Chicago. My lifelong dream was to be an elementary school teacher. Married my high school sweetheart when I was 25. Mm-hmm. And that's the Instagram highlight reel version of the story. But the real life version of the story is life has been life in my whole life, like most of us, right? So I came into entrepreneurship very accidental. It's definitely not something that I ever saw for myself. But my husband and I, we're living in Chicago. Things were going well. My husband has always had an entrepreneurial spirit. Our older son was going to go into high school. We decided that Chicago was just becoming increasingly dangerous. And I actually had a brother that was murdered when I was in elementary school. My brother was 15 years old, left to go to school one day, never came home. Even with my brother passing away, there were still rules, I would say, in Chicago in terms of like the violence, but those rules were becoming non-existent. And we were really beginning to be concerned about our son's safety, which put us on a path, okay, well, where else would we live? A year prior, you never would have been able to tell me that I would have ever considered moving away, largely in part because at that point, my mom, I was her only child living. She buried not only my brother that was murdered, but 3 additional siblings that passed away from cancer. My mom and I are super close. We had no family in Texas. All of it just sounded totally crazy, but it's one of those things that when God is leading you into a space and leading you to do something, you just have to trust Him. And the very interesting thing about that season in our life is that my faith was on very faulty foundation. I was not rooted for a lot of different reasons.
Right.
My husband and I both had this undeniable call, and we knew that we were supposed to be here. Didn't quite know what it was supposed to look like, but knew it was supposed to be here. So fast forward, moved to Texas. I'm teaching. My husband has always been entrepreneurial, but it always felt like his business would go so far, like 2 steps forward, 5 steps back, 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. And his entrepreneurial spirit was like my Achilles heel in our marriage. I just thought, I wish you would
Understand
just,
that.
do something more stable and like so that we could just live a very ordinary life. Like all of these risks, it stressed me out, quite honestly, which makes it very interesting. The fact that I was sitting in the balcony at church a couple years after we moved here, and our pastor was preaching about obedience. And he was preaching about the story Abraham was told to sacrifice Isaac. What came up for me was just the immediate obedience. Abraham immediately obeyed and did what God asked him to do. And I heard the Holy Spirit tell me in that moment, go help. I cannot tell you how I knew, but I knew I was supposed to quit my job and go into real estate. Like it was not on the cards. It was not something we discussed. Literally, I got in the car from church. I told my husband that I'm going to start taking classes. He immediately signed me up for classes, and now this new life is beginning. At the time, I heard go help your family. I got into the business thinking that my husband and I would work side by side and this would be a family business. All I wanted to make was the money that I was making teaching so that I could be more present for my family. But that act of moving to Texas and doing it scared, then the act of leaving my job, it has just spiraled into a theme for my life. And now here we are. Mm-hmm. So that was about close to a decade. December of 2016 was when I was sitting in church listening to Pastor on the balcony. And now in 2026, real estate broker. My son is now in the business with us. Me and my husband don't work together. We work side by side. But what God has done through this entrepreneurship journey is he has just really shown me that he has called me to use my gift of teaching to bring ministry into the marketplace.
Wow, isn't that interesting? Of all the states to choose from, how did y'all choose Texas?
My husband was over the cold, so we wanted nice weather. We wanted a progressive real estate market. And I think when we saw Texas had no state income tax, that came into play. So we literally Googled what we wanted, and 5 of the top 10 cities that matched our want were all in Texas. So we were like, okay, let's start here. But when we came to Dallas and we went to church on one Sunday, we went to the Potter's house and Pastor T.D. Jakes preached a sermon. The sermon was about reeling your blessing. He told a story about when he went deep sea fishing once. It's not cakewalk when you go deep sea fishing. Like you got to really work to reeling your blessings. And he was like, there's somebody in the dimension that you're in, you're tapped out. So in order for you to get what God has for you, you are going to have to take your net. You're going to have to take your fishing rod, get it out of the dimension you're in. And his exact words, girl, well, you're going to have to go in some new unknown territory into a new dimension, throw your rod, and you're going to have to reel in your blessing. And me and my husband were looking like, who told him we were coming here? So that was our confirmation.
T.D. Jakes, he will make you stretch yourself. And ironically, T.D. Jakes brought my husband to Texas. It's so funny. He tried to go up to T.D. Jakes and security is like, what are you doing? And he's calling like, yes, I would like an appointment with T.D. Jakes. And they're like, to talk about what? No, it doesn't work like that.
Right.
So now you've moved to Texas with your whole family. And you mentioned that you're your mom's only living child at this point. And she wanted to stay in Chicago, right? So she didn't end up moving with you to Texas.
Us moving here, it ended up being such a blessing in disguise because it gave her such a reprieve. She had a place to visit over the past, decade. I was able to just bless my mom in ways that wouldn't have been possible if we stayed put. My mom did end up passing away a couple of years ago. Even though the worst of the worst has happened, I have seen his promises be fulfilled in every scenario. And even though it was so tough leaving her, she completely understood and she gave me her blessing. When I really got granular with her and told her like, hey, we are really moving for the safety of our boys. And nothing hurt her like my brother that was murdered. All of her children, obviously, it was just really painful to see them go. But my other siblings, they had longer bouts with cancer. So my mother would always tell me one of the most beautiful things was that she got to be in the room when Jesus brought them to the world, and when he came back for them, right? But with my brother who was murdered, he was taken from us. So she understood we needed to do what we needed to do for our boys. And it was honestly even the best thing for their relationship. Grandma hearts is even bigger than mama heart.
And so your mom, she gives her blessing. You get to Texas and you decide to go into real estate. The very interesting thing is how you had never mentioned this interest to your husband, but he was like, let's go. So he's helping you along. And while you're in the same business, you're not actually in business together. I think a lot of people, including myself initially, didn't realize that at first, or that you dabbled in real estate a little bit while y'all were in Chicago, right?
Well, I did it kicking and screaming. It was solely because my husband was heavily flipping at the time. And I got my license pretty much so he could save on commissions, right? I was the worst realtor in the world because my heart wasn't in it, right? My heart was in teaching. So with that being said, he'd been telling me, like, when I got out of the business, I was in and out very quickly. When I got out, he would always encourage me to go back to real estate, give it another shot. But I'm thinking, like, sir, I'm the stable one in this relationship in terms of insurance. And my husband has always been a provider, but the market and just entrepreneurship is cyclical. We went through the recession, the buttload of properties during that time. So, from my perspective, I was our safe bet. We always kept our expenses at a place where my teacher salary could cover it. That was the goal. So even though he's encouraging me to get into real estate for years, at that time, I did not realize that the most dangerous thing you could do is to have your income dependent on somebody else, right? So he'd been encouraging me for years. So even though this was it was so brand new for me to mention it that day, it was probably a silent prayer he'd been praying for years.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that he's always had this entrepreneurial spirit and you've always been the stable one. In my marriage, very much the same. He was an entrepreneur. I always had this career.
Yeah.
And now we've sort of switched, right? So he's Mr. Corporate, but now I'm like, I want to go out and do all this entrepreneur stuff. And he's like, wait, that's never been who you are. But to your point, when you let the Holy Spirit lead, sometimes he will just do some things you don't expect. So what I want to understand, Miss Rosemary, is how you go from teacher to, okay, reluctantly, I want to go ahead and get into this real estate market, to where you are now.
I don't know, a couple of years after being in real estate. Honestly, even before that, it clicked to me when we were moving to Dallas. Because I was thinking to myself, okay, Rosemary, if we go to Dallas, because everyone's afraid of failing, right? You hear it all the time. And I said, if we go to Dallas, and it does not work out, what's the worst thing that could happen to me? And the worst thing that could happen was I go back to Chicago, right? I go back to teaching. I go back home. So if the worst thing that can happen is the life that I'm living right now, then why not try? That is the way that I handle most scenarios in my life. So I'll give you a great example. You talked about your husband walking up to TD Jakes. I would do the same thing, right? Like one time I went to the Oprah Winfrey show, and this was back in Chicago. And when you go to the Oprah show, well, they don't have the show anymore, but whatever the commercial break would be, that would be a break for the audience. At that point, I loved Oprah. Like she was my auntie in my head. I watch her every day, probably the same way your husband felt about TD Jakes. So during a commercial break, I was just thinking to myself, I'm not leaving unless Oprah knows that I'm here. Literally, that was my thought. So I jumped up and screamed, Oprah, I love you, and I'm a teacher. And Oprah said, who said that? She calls me down. We take a photo together that I still have to this day. They send me the photo. They send me a little gift bag. And that's a core memory that I'll have forever. But what's the worst thing that could have happened, right? The worst thing that could have happened is I stand up, I scream, I tell Oprah I'm here, and her security sits me down and I don't meet Oprah. Well, that's where I was at in the beginning. So that's where my whole do it scared has come from, is that I think that sometimes we wait for the most perfect, opportune time to take the risk. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be pretty, but you got to shoot your shot when you have it. So little by little and faith by faith, when I got into real estate, that's where my faith walk with the Lord really started. I wish that there was a resource that I could use that really spoke to my journey as an entrepreneur and a real estate agent And like, I didn't have to choose Jesus or business, right? So I was like, well, let me try to write a book about it. Let me do it. So what's the worst thing that can happen? Right? But it's the Real Estate Bestie devotional. It's named after our community. It was just little faith steps day by day. And that's the difference. It's a gradual walk. I'm 45 right now. And I am at the age where I can see the ones who are quote unquote successful from those who are still living their same experience that they did at 20 and 30 years old. The difference, we all start at the same place, but the difference is that the ones who have a certain level of success, they took that little risk and that little risk and that little risk, and it just has widened the gap over time. So that's where I think I'm different at now.
Isn't that interesting? I love that. I love that because it made me think about something like generational wealth, right? So it made me think about people who live in big houses, okay? And I know a lot of people who live in big houses, and people make a lot of assumptions about these people that they're just hugely successful. But what they miss is if you, when you're young, prioritize, hey, I'm going to buy a little house. And let's say in your early 20s and you buy a little house. You don't have to spend much, but you buy a little house. And then in your late 20s, you buy a little bit of a bigger house. And then in your 30s, you buy a little bit more of a bigger house. And you keep working on that, right? Every 6, 7 years, you're just upgrading a little bit at a time. And then you meet somebody and they're 40 plus years old and you don't understand how you're 40 plus years old and they're 40 plus years old and they live in this huge house. Well, it's not that they have all this money, but they made small investments in themselves a little bit over time. And so you can see the results. And so to me, that is sort of a way that you can really see it with your eyes on how if you make smart investments, you can grow. But they couldn't have went out and bought that house at 20, right? But they just made small investments. And so that's what you're saying. You're saying you got to be willing to make even the smallest investment in yourself. When you get a chance, if you see conditions look pretty good.
50-50 chance it's going to be a yes, minimal, but it's 100% chance that you're going to learn from it.
Yes, that's right, because nothing in life is ever wasted. What else helped you take that leap?
It's the daily investments in self. Every single morning, starting my morning off with quiet time with the Lord. Biggest investment I've ever made. To when I'm in my car, I don't listen to music. I listen to podcasts or audiobooks or investments in the relationship with my husband. A lot of times when we're looking at successful people, we want to see the big grandiose moment when things change for them. But I guarantee you that you're going to find the success in their boring daily habits that oftentimes the others are overlooking those things for what's going to be feeling good in the moment. So that would be the big differentiator for me as well.
I love that. And you know what I heard also? I heard discipline in that too, because we can do things that may not always feel good. I don't want to read my Bible every day, but that level of discipline to say, well, regardless of what you feel like, let's go ahead and do it. Because this is a discipline, building a muscle in you. And I'm not talking about perfection. I'm just talking about a level of discipline to say, these are some things that I'm going to try to make non-negotiable, that I'm going to do every day. But these are things that are good for me. And I think that's a really important point, Miss Rosemary, because as women, we often look at how we can help other people and, how we're pouring into family. So much of your work is giving back to others and teaching others, but that started with you pouring into yourself. You needed those things to be able to then give out to other people. So every day you're doing something to build upon your skill and better yourself. But the thing I find really interesting is you always had a passion for teaching. And see, that's why I love the Lord, because he's so creative. You have to me what looks like a totally unique business model. You're a realtor / real estate educator / life coach / dream helper. What does a day in the life for Rosemary look like? Are you still doing real estate day to day, or are you teaching more?
My gifts are better served as a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a discipler. And that takes a different level of obedience, trust, and faith, right? It's ironic. This morning in my quiet time, I was reading the story in the Bible about when the man says to Jesus, I want to follow you. What do I have to do to have everlasting life? And he's like, you got to give up your stuff and go sell it and give it to the poor. And he was like, I don't want to do that. And I resonate with that so deeply. As much as I love God, like I know how to make money in real estate, right? And now that he's calling me out of doing it in the way that I'm used to doing it, there is a level of, I don't want to use the word fear, but uncertainty, where I have to remind myself every day, I have to take myself back to that person who was in the balcony with my teacher salary. I didn't feel like I had a lot to lose. It was easier to go back to. Just like I was willing to hold that with an open hand, I have to be willing to hold what I do now with an open hand. So with that being said, my days are transitioning because now I have the opportunity to have a local real estate team. So I have 3 young ladies on my team. They are doing most of our transacting with our clients, but I am in the role of coach, mentor, rainmaker for them. So I still get to serve, but I'm just not as forward-facing with the clients as I used to be, because now I need space because God is calling me to coach women all over the country in the real estate space. And the Lord is showing me we're not limiting what we're doing for real estate. So he's calling me out to just mentor, coach, and support women in business. I can't expect to be able to do that with the same capacity if I'm transacting on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of my days now are spent like Zoom calls, podcasting, coaching, conversation. I get the great opportunity to be in front of audiences like your beautiful audience for podcasts and speak at conferences and things like that. The Lord really is highlighting my teaching gift in this season. And I am willingly stepping into it.
Now, it took you being out in the field to get to the point where you are now. You're further down the road than a lot of people. But let's speak to the person who is, they're not as far down the road as you are. They are, they've been on a journey. And I'll personalize this. I'll make it for myself because in a corporate America career where it's like you know how to make money. And that's how I feel. That piece I got down, right? But then I feel the Lord saying, go this way. And I don't see no money that way. But the Lord is saying, go that way. What do you tell the person? Because we know what it says in the scripture, right? Or he told the young man, follow me. The young man said, well, I've got all these things and I love you, but I'm not going to leave all my stuff. And the Lord says, okay, carry on. He didn't beg him. He doesn't say, please, son, let me explain to you why it's so important for you to follow me. He allows him to go on his way.
Look at the Bible. I was reading the other day about when Israel went to the Jordan. They had to stick their feet in the Jordan before God parted it, right? Even though he had already parted the Red Sea, you had to take the first faith move and the first action step. But it's hard to trust somebody who you haven't spent time with. I say that all the time. Like, I'm not going to let anybody bring the mac and cheese to my Thanksgiving party. I'm not going to make it because I don't trust myself. I'm going to have my mother-in-law because she has proven herself over and over. Why? Because I've spent time with her. So a lot of time we are faulting ourselves for not following God, but we're standing on faulty faith from the beginning because we don't know him, we're not spending time with him, we don't trust him. So that would be the first thing that I would say is then maybe you need to just slow down and spend some time just getting to know the Lord. I did an event for our Real Estate Bestie group. It cost 6 figures to put this event on. And it was a time where the Lord was calling me to take a social media break. And I'm like, I need to take a social media break. I need to sell these tickets for this event. And I clearly heard the Holy Spirit say to me, oh, you think you can outpost my provision? And that was like a mic drop moment for me. God, he is not going to call you to do something that he has not already prepared a way. Now, here's the difference, though. It might not be the cushy way we're used to, right? It might not be, I'm going to prepare a way. And that means, Rosemary, that you're not going to have to adjust your lifestyle or adjust, what you are accustomed to. But just know that whatever I'm calling you to do, my way is better. And I'm going to be honest to say that I have to check my heart and my head all the time. He wants to know what we want. Think about our kids. Give me a Christmas list. Don't have me out here spending unnecessary money and I'm not getting what you want. I want to hear from you what you want, but I don't want anything from you more than I just want you. So, just being able to just be satisfied
Right.
in who God is for myself, I just look at his track record. As a matter of fact, if he would have shown me my life today, 10 years ago, I would have been scared to pursue it. He couldn't show it to me.
Yeah.
Because if he would have showed it to me, I would have given him every reason on why I was not qualified or fit to do it, get somebody else to do it.
Mhm.
So he knew that he couldn't show me everything.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I would just say, like, where is your trust? And here's the thing. If you are not at the place where you can fully trust God yet, that's also okay. Like, some people are like, oh, you should know that. No, be honest about where you are, God. Okay, here's the condition of my heart. I'm really struggling with leading this career. I hear what you're telling me to do, but I'm really struggling to trust you in this area. So, Lord, help me with my unbelief. Help me with the parts of me that really wants to trust you, but I'm trusting this corporation or this, that, and being honest with him, and he will show it to you. That's a very real place to be. But God has just proven it over and over with me in my life. In my real estate career, we're talking like 10x, 15x. My teacher salary is what I'm used to getting. And he's like, yeah, that's cool. Let them do it so that I can put you over here in a more ministry-based setting. And I'm like, but I know better than to disobey. Does that make sense?
It does. This is why it's so important to let the Holy Spirit lead, because everything you said, I know it's from the Lord because I heard it in my spirit. And what the Lord keeps trying to tell me is, Bernitha, you're making it too complicated. It's really very simple. And just like he told the rich young man that we were talking about, you want to follow me? Just sell all your possessions or give them to the poor and just come along with me. It's just that simple. And the man was sad and he went on his way, right? The point you made is, who do you trust? And to your other point, if you don't spend time with someone, how can you trust them?
But that's what we do. We go to church for 2 hours on Sunday, and then you pray on your way into a meeting, and you pray when your friend says, I have a diagnosis, you pray for her. And that is the level of our relationship with Jesus for a lot of us when we're being honest. And then we wonder why when God is calling us to do something, we don't trust to do it because we don't know him. We think we know him, but we don't know him. And then also trusting that God will work out some heart issues. Even with the story that we keep going back to with the man, something that stood out to me was, I was like, did he have a problem? Because he was rich, right? Did he have a problem selling his stuff or giving it to the poor? Because me, I'll sell my stuff because I know how to flip the money. But does God know his heart issue is about loving his brother? Because before he was like, I keep all the commandments. God knows our heart issues. So Nona Jones, I've heard her say this, Lord, please don't bless me beyond where my character will sustain me. Also in trusting God's timing, if he does give us a struggle season, trusting that he knows, like my marriage, he couldn't allow us to see a certain level of financial success, what the world would say is successful, before we got some stuff tied in the marriage, because it would have been a detriment to us. And also on the flip side, I'll never forget when my mother was passing away, that was the best year that I'd ever had financially, right? Like just be able to like just see some stuff and do things that I never expected, but not one of those dollars in my bank account. Okay. Not one was going to change what I was experiencing in the moment. All I could do was call out for Jesus, right? I've shared that my mother, she lost all her children. Her first husband left her widowed. He had cancer. Each of those children eventually passed away from cancer. And then I have a brother who was murdered. And my dad had some kids that passed away. So I have 6 siblings that have passed away. My greatest fear in moving to Texas, because my parents were already older when I moved, that my mom had me at 40. So when I moved, my parents were in their 70s. I was just so scared. Like, what if something happens to my parents that I can't get to them? That was the fear that I always had in the back of my mind. But even in that fear, it's like, do you trust me?
Okay.
Right? Do you trust me? So one day I got a call. My mom was in the hospital. I was expecting her to get like a cancer diagnosis and just figure out in my life, like, okay, how am I going to work my life out over the next couple of months or years to be her caretaker? Am I going to get her here? Like all of these things I'm starting to work out in my mind. Well, God had a different plan. I got a call like, Rosemary, something has shifted. You need to get home now. I was scheduled to be home in the next day or two, but I needed to get home now. I prayed the whole time, Lord, am I going to get on this plane and get off and my mama be dead? And this is the one thing that I asked you, like, did not want to move here if this was going to be it. Psalm 34:4, you seek the Lord, he will answer us, but not only will he answer us, he delivers us from our fear. So not only did he let me get home to her, but I got home to her and I was able to bring her home to her actual home out of the hospital on hospice. And just the stage for worship and Jesus that we were able to set for her over a course of 5 days, it was unlike anything before. But you know, the most beautiful thing was that my daily habit of quiet time and meeting with the Lord is what got to be on display for my whole family. And we were able to create an environment that, like, the Holy Spirit was palatable. Like, you could touch it and you could feel it. And there was a moment that I was sitting and I was holding my mama, and I was grateful for what I had done in business. Because of what I'd done in business and because of those daily habits, I could sit there and be fully present with her, not worrying about a boss, not worrying about lesson plans or students or anything like that, because I was in the seat of the business owner and had fruits of my labor. It was a blessing in that moment. I was also keenly aware that all of this success, everything that the world applauds me for, because that was the season of my life where I was starting to get noticed and there was a lot of applause, none of it mattered. Because in this moment, all I had was to be at the feet of Jesus. Even though it was the worst, most horrible time of my life, I love that Jesus did that, because now I get to hold it all with an open hand. And quite honestly, I was down a path where I was getting so used to the grind and the accolades and all of that. I would have been like the man, like, ooh, but this is like this is my stuff. And the Lord showed me with the transition of my mom is that I have to be the thing you hold on to. And in my goodness and in my grace, yeah, I may allow you to have some of these worldly treasures. And this is still something I have to remind myself on a daily basis. If you elevate these things over me, it's a heart issue. And I want your heart. And when God has your heart, well, anything has your heart, your actions will show what the desires of your heart is, right? So that was the most painful area of my life. But it's ironic because 2021 was both the best and the worst year of my life. But I'm happy he did it that way, because if he didn't do it that way, then I may be so caught up in the worldly treasures, the worldly applauses. And because of that experience, I get to hold it all with an open hand and just give him my unfiltered yes.
Wow. Beautiful, profound, amazing. And I can relate to it on so many levels when I'm just sitting in gratitude and I'm just being thankful. Before I had my daughter and I knew what the experience of childbirth was, the thing that I always went back to, my number one thing that I was most grateful for was being there for the passing of my stepfather, being there to hold his hand and being in the space where he left and went to heaven, and knowing that God is real, like your mother was in her home. Him being at home in his bed, surrounded by family. We grew up in a small town and everyone knew him. And when I tell you, the whole street was just lined with cars. I don't know why. They were just lined with cars, knowing that Calvin was in there. He was getting ready to pass away. And they just wanted to pay him reverence. I just said, my God, this is a life lived well. When people are around you and they love you and they want to be near you when you leave this earth. You're a teacher. So to me, I think there's no better report card for how you've lived your life than the people that show up for you at the end of it. Anyhow, my stepdad had a well-lived life, and I can tell your mom did too.
She was so great that a lot of the qualities and wisdom and even the way that God has allowed me to go about and create community and teach, it's nothing but my mama. The fruit that a lot of people see from my life was actually the seeds that she planted in her. I thought about this today, girl. I was working out And I thought about, fun fact, Kanye West's mom was one of my college professors. It was in her class before he blew up. And the way that she talked about the relationship with him and her, it reminded me of the relationship that I had with my mom. I remember that, like, when I was in her class. So fast forward, I was working out today and I was thinking, like, Lord, thank you for not letting me lose my mind. Because Kanye ain't been right since his mama died. Right? I know how she championed him. It was so much the way that my mom loved and championed me. I was just very aware, like, God, what he is going through or has gone through, that could be my story. And with that being said, my mom lost 4 of her natural children. So she could have closed the door and not had capacity to parent me, let alone love me the way that she did. And no one would have asked why. But the fact that you just graced her and took care of her, when you tell me to put something down and trust you, I'm all in. I'm all in because I have evidence in my life. I have evidence in my mother's life that your word has never come back void. Lord, you kept me. Like, you kept me. Well, Kanye has to get right.
Never.
But you have kept me. Why? Because my mama gave me Jesus. I'm just so grateful for that.
Yes, it's a blessing. And I really love when you talked about the seeds that your mom planted. You are the fruit of that today. I feel that so much, especially when I look at lives like yours, our children. And I think about not just our parents, but our grandparents and all those ancestors that came before us. And we're getting the opportunity to go out here and live our dreams. People fought and died for us to have this kind of opportunity. And it's just amazing. Now, when I think about my stepdad, he was not somebody who was a civil rights leader or any of that stuff. He grew up in a small Texas town where there were just a very few amount of Black people. I mean, when I graduated from high school, there was only 2 Black girls in the class, and I was one of them. So it was real small when he was a kid. So what he taught us was how to stay safe. He taught us how to succeed in a world that wasn't made for us. And to me, that's just as big as the civil rights leaders, you know? And so I just feel so grateful for those who came before us, like your mom, like the ancestors. I just feel like that the things that we're getting the opportunity to do today is all seeds that they planted. You know, they're saying, we're going to keep going. Maybe they may not have said it consciously, but I think the hope was there that one day we'd have the level of freedoms that we have. I know your mama and your siblings are up there and they're super proud, super proud. I want to go back to something you talked about a little bit earlier, and that was you and your husband. You know, you see on social media and you guys are just lovebirds. Tell me about your love. How have you maintained it? How have you protected it? And how has it influenced your business?
So we just celebrated the 30th anniversary of our first date. So we have been together since 1995.
Wow.
Yeah, the person that I am today is not the person that Corey married. So he didn't sign up for this, nor did I sign up for what he's doing either. You know what I mean? We evolve. I know what you're going to say. Even though he wanted you to be an entrepreneur. But the way that I do it is so different than what would be natural for him. I am probably one of the most extroverted people you'll ever meet. I am very forward-facing. Started off by saying how you would follow me on social, and I share all of these different parts of my life. My husband is the opposite of me.
Is that right?
He's an introverted extrovert. Like, when you know him, he probably can be more extroverted than me, but he keeps to himself and who he loves to himself. So it definitely has been a learning curve for us both on how do we first honor God, honor our marriage, and then honor what God has trusted us with. To be honest, neither one of us have done a good job and still don't do a good job every day of that. We are continuing to learn and grow together. Some things that I think have been just monumental is my husband and I, we do a really good job of communicating with each other. And that is probably one of the toughest things that I see. I don't see people being friends, and I totally understand how easy it is to lose that connection. So I'm going to give you just a really silly thing that we started doing that has been the foundation to not only our marriage, but the foundation to a lot of our friendships. So everyone says go on date nights, go on date nights, spend time together.
Okay.
But let's be real, those dates be dry. After you talk about the kids and the bills and you hear those stories from work, sometimes you just don't have stuff in common. So Corey and I, 15 years ago, we started playing these games called question games. And we would start asking each other random questions like, who was your favorite third grade teacher? When you were a kid, what kind of ice cream did you like? And now it's just evolved. So we have books of questions. We buy these table talk games.
Okay.
We have some that are marriage-based, some that are friendship-based. Funny games. I look on Pinterest. We play these question games with each other a couple times per week, and we do it with our kids too. And what it's done is that it's developed a friendship. So instead of putting pressure on ourselves to be able to talk about stuff, we use these questions. Now, use the questions with wisdom. Like if you're struggling financially, don't start off with, are you a saver? Like don't pick a fight, but just some low risk communication. But it started again with going back to what we talked about before with the habit. Right.
Mhm.
So when we were not in a good place and when we didn't have a lot to talk about and when the demands of life and kids were pulling us away from each other, we still would commit to let's do 3 questions tonight.
Mhm.
And I also want to say this, my husband absolutely hated it in the beginning, but this small way has just opened up the door for us to communicate. And my friends, like tonight, I'm going to a concert with some girlfriends. We're staying at the hotel. They already know I'm going to bust out a question game. They already know. Because that is just the way to just get to know the people that you are doing life with. Because in marriage, in relationships, in parenting, we can hide in plain sight. We can be going through hell and have people around us, but because we don't know how to communicate or haven't had the reps to just communicate when there was not risk involved, we for sure aren't going to communicate when there is risk involved. So that would be like my big marriage tip. And then how do I protect it? I ask God to give me wisdom. And I don't always operate in that wisdom, but I'm aware that I'm not. And I'm aware and I'm asking healthy community. We have been a part of a life group for 10 years. We invite people into our mess, which also is gradual. We're really, really close with our life group now. In the beginning, we went and were a part of it just out of routine or just checking a box, but then asking God to just really bring couples that are fighting for their marriages in relationship with us and committing to doing life with them has been a huge thing. And then also bringing our kids along with what we are doing. So the question games that we play with each other, we play with our boys. With my 25-year-old son, we have a standing call once every other week called Adulting. And we talk about faith, family, fitness, finances, and fun. We go through all of these areas. I share with him where I am in my faith walk. He shares where he is. We talk about things we're working on for family, so just having these open lines of communication, it's been really good. It's not perfect, but it's been good. And just making that commitment for family. Sometimes I'm like, okay, God, you gave me all this ambition for business, but it felt like my family was getting in the way. I hate to say it like that, but it felt like they were getting in the way. But again, it's trusting God. God is for marriage. He is for our families. He's not going to give us something that is going to tear it apart. And that's what I see a lot in real estate. I see a lot of people that have these highly successful businesses, but their personal lives are in shambles. You just have to be aware to say, God, I don't want that. And I also don't want to be building a life and a business for someday. I want to be building a life and a business that I can enjoy today with my kids. That also is going to take us being real about our schedules and our ambition and prioritizing our families as we are building what God is calling us to build.
Wow. There's so much there. I had to take some notes for myself. I love the idea of the question game. I'm going to do it with my husband. I will say one of the first things we did when we were dating was I had this bag and I had all these questions and he answered the questions, but he later said, when I was dating you, I kind of felt like I was on a job interview. So he may have tempered his answers a little bit. It sounds really fun. So I'll try again. It sounds very low risk.
Yeah, low risk because we just want to get the conversations in.
Yeah.
Me and Corey have been together for 30 years and we still find new stuff out about each other.
That's interesting. And so I love all that. And I love that you do it with your kids. And when you talk about those conversation reps, I think that's so important, especially in this day and age when the answer to everything is just cut off your family, girl. Don't talk to your family no more. Your mama doing you wrong, your brother doing you wrong. Don't talk to them no more. It's well, you got to build that muscle. That's a good point. You got to get used to communicating with them in a low risk way so that when you have some sort of issue, because when you were just describing your conversation that you have with your son, when I tell you that is the dream for my life, yes, I would like to have some level of success doing the things that I love to do. But when I tell you the dream for my life is for my child to look forward to calling me or seeing my name on the phone and not hitting the decline, that is the dream for my life. And I think the way you get there is that you got to get used to communicating with each other and to not feel so threatened. There's not all that risk because you've built that muscle. So I love that. We're going to do that tonight. So you've talked to us about the beautiful life that you're living and even some of the ups and downs. Considering all that you've accomplished, what's your God dream for the future? What's next?
My director of operations is also my best friend. And we were just giving ourselves permission to dream for our business. Because sometimes we can get so churchy and holy that you act like you don't really want success, and that's a lie. So we are bringing ministry to the marketplace, but we also want to bring marketplace to the ministry. And what I mean by that is I think that sometimes there is a hesitancy to raise up business leaders, but we really need to raise up business leaders in the church that will now go out into the marketplace and take territory, because that's where the lost are. So I just want God to use me in that way to not only work with people in industry, but I don't know if you're familiar with Ryan Leak. He's one of my favorite communicators. But Ryan is, he's a minister, but he goes out and speaks gospel message to different organizations, or like a John Maxwell, right? Like that is the way that I want God to use me. I just want him to expand, right? I want him to expand. And my answer is yes, because I want to go to heaven, whether it's tomorrow or when I'm 108 on E. I don't want anything that he left me here to do. I don't want that to be undone because there wasn't a willingness from me. And where I believe he's calling me. And to be fair, when I got into real estate, this is probably why I got into it, because money was not my driver. I really felt the Lord saying, Rosemary, I'm going to give you like a platform. Like I'm going to give you some credibility in this space, but don't be confused. It's for my glory. And when I want you to shift, I want you to shift. And I know that I'm in that shifting season right now. And I don't want to limit how his glory will be revealed through my life, but not for the sake of Rosemary, but for the sake of the gospel. Because the gospel has saved my life. What burdens my heart more than anything is when people bury their gifts. Right? The enemy knows that we're smart enough not to go out here, rob and steal and scam people, right? But if he can convince us to bury the thing that God has called us to do, and for some of us, it's to be in industry. For some of us, it's to be in full-time ministry. For some of us, it's the way that we are stewarding and discipling our children in our own house. Like God is going to give us all different assignments. But if the enemy can confuse us, sometimes we're burying what we're doing because we're trying to do what somebody else is doing, when God didn't call us to that. I just want to help people get clear and unstuck so that they can fill out their ministry assignment. Yeah, I just want God to show me how to do that.
Yes, and that God is certainly doing in your life. And I loved your point about the level of influence that God has given you, because that will draw people to you. And truth be told, it's what drew me to you, your understanding of real estate and your professionalism, but it was your love of Jesus that kept me coming back.
I love that you pointed that out, because this is also why I want to teach. Because if I was a whack realtor, nobody would care that I love Jesus. And I hate to say it like that, but we need to be excellent. And you just affirmed something for me, because that's what draws people in. But what keeps them is what God is calling you to do. But if we are lackluster in our assignment and not showing excellence in that, then why would someone want to be attracted to you? My son tells the story of growing up. My mother's side of the family was very religious and spiritual. He was like, but everybody over there was broke.
I love kids. They just call it like they see it.
But then you have my husband's side of the family who's very entrepreneurial. They seem far from Christ, but everybody over there seems like they're balling. So I think that we have a responsibility to be excellent in industry, not for the sake of being excellent, but that's my mission field.
That's an excellent point. What if the rich young ruler that we've been talking about today from Matthew. Bless his heart. I can totally understand, appreciate where he's coming from. But I wonder, how many souls could he have saved if he decided to follow the direction of Jesus? He had this level of influence, and people most likely would have stood up and really took notice. I don't know, maybe, but we'll never know. So like we always say, nothing is ever wasted. Whether you follow the Lord or not, God's going to use it.
Yep.
Rosemary, thank you so much for joining us today on the Bernitha Rena Relates podcast. I feel like I got a brand new bestie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
You're so welcome. All right. Have fun at your girls' night.
Yes, I will, girl. We're going to see Brandy and Monica tonight.
Today's conversation reminded me that when God asks us to follow him fully, the reward is always going to be greater than anything he's asking us to lay down. Guys, remember to follow me on Instagram at Bernitha Rena Relates and Facebook and YouTube at Bernitha Rena Relates. And of course, like, subscribe, and share this podcast anywhere you listen to your podcast. Thanks for listening. I love you for it. Have the best day.
What's been done is done again. Same old story, different pen. Yeah. We make mistakes, trying to learn from what life takes. We make mistakes, trying to learn from what life takes. Let's contemplate, can we relate? Under the sun, it all feels the same. You and me, just different names. Let's contemplate, can we relate? Yeah. Let's contemplate, can we